The Tristan Thompson era ended after one season tonight as the Celtics traded Thompson to the Hawks in exchange for Kris Dunn. The Hawks then flipped Thompson to the Kings for DeLon Wright. The Celtics saved $3 million in cap space and create a new trade exception with the deal. More on that later. I'm sad about it. Celtics then went ahead and traded for Josh Richardson from the Mavericks. Richardson exercised his $11 million player option for this coming season. Why wouldn't he? And he will fit under the rest of Gordon Hayward's trade exception. Richardson is coming off a down year as he scored 12 points per game and shot a career low from three-point range. I will note that down year for Richardson followed a down year for Richardson. Richardson is coming off back-to-back down years. He's finding ways for each year to be more of a down year than the previous one. Hurley, are the Celtics better? I mean, you asked the question off the top of, like, what is Brad Stevens doing? Do you think that so far he's made the Celtics better?
I do not. I don't know how you could. Not to say that you need to light your hair on fire, but I would say that's more not a down year, but a downward trend, maybe.
Yeah.
The only maybe possibility that they're better is to Tomasi's point about wanting Chaim Bloom to be smarter, everyone. Maybe Brad Stevens is in on, three-point ball rotation or something like that. That was a poor joke. There's no. How are they better? I mean, Tristan Thompson is not a loss, but you're not ready. You're not prepping the parade.
They're better. I think they are better because Tristan Thompson did nothing for me. And so I'm happy in today's NBA, the big lumbering center who just yells at people when they miss a pick and roll or whatever. Like, I have no tolerance for that. Josh Richardson at least did his best. I hesitate to call him 3 and D. The D part is real. The 3, it's just been abandoned, right? Mm-hmm. But to me, there's some redundancy with him and Marcus Smart. And I'm ready for the Marcus Smart experience to be over. And if this helps lead to that, then I'm fine with it.
So it's interesting you say that because I see them get Josh Richardson and I think, well, there's your answer on Evan Fournier. They probably aren't going to pay him. He can be the Evan Fournier replacement. And then you walked in and were like, hey, there's your Marcus Smart replacement. And I was like, God damn. I mean, it does kind of make sense. One of these guys certainly is going to go, be it Fournier or Smart. But I think, if anything, it says they're probably not going to sign Fournier now, right?
Well, isn't Smart Brad's guy? Aren't they?
I can't
We're
tell
about to find out, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I think everything that people said about Marcus Smart, good, bad, otherwise, has had levels of truth to it. And part of that was, the winning plays, the late in games, the plays that led to them winning games when they were actually good. That went away last year. Like, it wasn't there. He's the same guy. There's no reason for it necessarily, but that guy wasn't there last year. So if he's not doing those things, then what is he doing? So maybe this is, to that point, that would count as a significant change, more so than Tristan Thompson leaving. If they decide that their longest tenured player is done here, then that would be something that starts, shaking things up and changing things. But if not seeing it.
Dunn is actually their shortest tenured player. They just got him today. They may have actually flipped him, though, in that deal as well. It's a Kris Dunn joke.
Yeah, I get it. One thing I'll say about Josh Richardson real quick is I watch a lot of Mavericks highlights because everyone loves Doncic, and you see him setting up Dorian Finney-Smith or the Maxi Cleat. Well, you go through the list of guys who are on the receiving end of his passes. Like, I don't remember seeing too many Josh Richardson highlights. And when you're playing with Luka Doncic, you should be featured a little bit more.
An interesting thing that I saw from Brian Robb was that all the guys the Celtics acquired today are on expiring deals. And we've talked so much about Bradley Beal. Do you trade Jaylen Brown for him? And now the kind of waters have been muddied there with Bradley Beal seemingly being like defiantly into the Wizards. But it does seem that they're loading up on guys on expiring contracts. I mean, does that say to you that they're looking ahead to next offseason and that they're not actually going to be spending? I mentioned Evan Fournier just a minute ago, that they're not actually going to be throwing real money at guys long term right now?
Why should they? Why should they throw money at Evan Fournier? I don't understand that at all. I know he had a great game against Team USA the other day, but he was underwhelming. That to me, that was the worst, 45% three-point shooter I think I've ever seen. I don't think he made a single one that mattered, that counted. And so to me, it's like, you're going to pay him?
My reason for that, and we had this argument at the end of the season, is that I found the Celtics have been so troublesome at replacing guys. So when it was a question of, do you bring back Evan Fournier? My answer was yes, because I was afraid of what the alternative would be, where like Gordon Hayward leaves and you're like, oh, we got this this idea of a trade exception that we're going to celebrate forever, and then it only ends up turning into Evan Fournier. So I wanted to hold on to him just for the sake of knowing that at least you have that asset and you're not going to lose something completely. But now that you bring in Richardson, I don't think either of those guys are studs, but at least you theoretically would have your replacement.
I would say, yeah, maybe Fournier is not the guy that you want to throw the money at, but why look ahead? Why skip this year mentally or strategically where you have two superstars, two all-stars, in a league where that's not guaranteed for 10 years? Maybe the window of, or I don't want to say window, that's an overused cliche. Maybe the actual opportunity you have with these two all-stars, maybe it's 3 years. And you just want to kick one away. So hopefully that's not the case, because as I mentioned earlier, you can't actually compete now in the Eastern Conference. Yeah, the Nets are going to be better than you. Yeah, the Bucks are going to be better than you. But you're not automatically eliminated before the season even begins. So to say, let's get guys on expiring deals and then next year really make the move, I don't like that at all.
I'll explain real quickly why you do it that way, because otherwise it's just a Band-Aid. You're just putting Band-Aids on this team. Like we saw, this team was not close last year. Not as close as they should have been given the two building blocks they have. If you start throwing a lot of money at Evan Fournier, who is a guy, he's just a guy, and then that takes you out of the running for somebody legitimate next year, your only hope of keeping Tatum in Boston is giving him a reason to stay. You don't do that with Band-Aids.
Isn't the most important thing this year just being a competitive basketball team? Like it's a simple statement, but think about how many times in the past year you'd put them on and they were down 12 and it never got closer. Like they would pack it in. I think this year is about maybe getting guys that have some sort of edge, some sort of care, so that they become a relevant team in the sense that they're not out of the game in the first quarter anymore.
Tomasi, there's a column for you. The Celtics, because the story that you're telling is correct, but it's also a story that has been applied to the Red Sox before, where they'll just go into an offseason and be like, the goal is we just need people to like us a little more. And that kind of is where the Celtics are.
They
right
won a
now.
World Series like that.
I got mentionitis with Brian Robb, man. I don't know why I keep mentioning him, but because he's great. He tweeted the following earlier tonight. A league source tells Mass Live the Celtics were able to fit Kris Dunn into Enes Kanter's $5 million trade exception, which was set to expire this weekend. That allows them to create a new $9.2 million exception in sending out Tristan Thompson. So the question then becomes, like, what do you do with that money? I'm still hesitant to, like, you want to do something with $9.2 million, it's a trade exception, that's fine. I don't know that you are in a position right now where the, like, very good filler players, the Sam Cassells of yesteryears, or like the Eddie House would be a better example, Montrezl Harrell in recent years, will say, like, okay, I'm going to come to your team for that, because even though the Celtics have two superstars right now, I still think like outsiders probably look at them and be like, yo, this team is kind of a mess.
Outsiders. Right now. Remember the story after the season? Insiders.
Yes, fair.
Blake Griffin was told not to come here. So there's
you go.
Insiders and outsiders. So yeah, that's a good point.
Thank you. You've paid me a compliment.
I missed the Dunn joke so bad. Like if you saw my face, it took like 10 seconds.
I still haven't quite figured it out.
Yeah, I said Marcus Smart being Dunn.
Oh, okay.
Dunn is the name of Kris Dunn.
Yeah.
He's just on another level.
Do you think they do
He's
anything
on a
of
roll.
consequence with this trade exception?
I mean, maybe eventually. I don't agree with you, actually, that people look at Boston and say, no, why would I want to go there? Because Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, mainly Jason Tatum, and a new coach who maybe excites people a little bit. This is a team that's been in the conference finals a bunch of times. So I don't think Boston's as hopeless a destination as you might.